Republicans yesterday calling on their colleagues to take a hard look in the mirror. Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, October 25th. Welcome to Morning Joe. With us, we have veteran columnist and MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and host of KCDC. Thank you. Now,
there we go.
Nice work, guys. Very nice.
Especially today. Casey Hunt, along with Joe, Willie, and me. What a day yesterday, Joe.
What a day in every way. You had so many things going on. The president going to Capitol Hill. I mean, we actually should probably start with Casey because...
Yeah.
What a day to be a Capitol Hill reporter, Casey. You have a day where the president's coming up on the Hill. Bob Corker, as Willie and Mike and I were just saying yesterday, Bob came in hot yesterday.
That's an understatement.
And then Jeff Flake delivered a speech on the Senate floor that you said and many others said people would be remembering years from now.
I think that's right, Joe. I mean, look, this was a day, my head was spinning by the end of the day because where we started all the way through to Bob Corker, the president, had just left Capitol Hill, and suddenly I was listening in my ear to, you know, what we had playing, and the words that Jeff Flake had for the president were incredibly serious, incredibly an attempt to put this in historical perspective and give voice to his frustration and, you know, what he was seeing around him. And this is a guy who was incredibly well-liked, well-respected, incredibly conservative, somebody with one of the most conservative voting records, but who had earned the respect of his Democratic colleagues, was a member of the Gang of Eight, took political risks on immigration. And I think that the senators in both parties that I talked to yesterday came away with a real sense of loss around this retirement.
Far beyond a rebuke.
Far beyond a rebuke, and this is this shows the insanity that has overtaken the Republican Party. I always joke when people would come and say, "Oh, you're a liberal." I say, "Well, at a 95% lifetime conservative rating, and I haven't really changed any positions." Jeff Flake, who was supposed to be this big liberal, that some goons over at Fox News, I won't mention his name, are attacking. Jeff Flake has a 96% lifetime conservative rating. He is the conservatives' conservative. He is the champion and has been his entire life of small government, of free trade. I mean, so when Jeff Flake becomes, Mike, too liberal for your party is headed towards the tar pits, which is exactly what's happening here. And we haven't even talked about Bob Corker.
Yeah.
You know, Joe, it's hard to measure moments like this in terms of history because history is such a long haul. But it's not hard to measure this moment in terms of what is going on right now within the Republican Party. This is a slow slide of principled conservatism among Republicans that has been an honorable part of your party for many, many years. A slow slide of that principled conservatism into something that resembles a dumpster fire. I mean, what people like Bannon are doing within the Republican Party, the lack of cohesion, the lack of a voice within the Republican Party other than people like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, it's truly an astounding moment politically.
To your point, Joe, you have pro-Trump conservatives defending New York Democrat Donald Trump against 96% approval rating conservative Jeff Flake. Things are turned upside down.
Who's been a conservative, by the way, his whole life. That had a 96% conservative
and
rating.
Not Trump. We're talking about
when Donald Trump was giving money to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and giving over $100,000 a year to the DNC and supporting pro-choice candidates and supporting pro-gun control candidates, Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, they've all been consistent.
And this is the end of 8 or 9 days. We're living in extraordinary times. We all know that. But this is the last 8 or 9 days especially. If you start with John McCain's speech in Philadelphia and go forward, I'm only talking about Republicans. This doesn't include Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
President Bush's speech.
You go from John McCain to George W. Bush to Bob Corker, Jeff Flake yesterday. These are Republicans who feel the need and are compelled to come out and reaffirm not just conservative values, but American values and say this is what's happening right now is not who we are. I don't know. Have we seen anything like this? 9 months, 10 months into a presidency where members of his own party are coming out like this, lining up to criticize him this way?
We haven't, and what you're seeing here, let's make no mistake of it, what we're seeing here is it's political suicide. It's the coming end of the Republican Party where you are losing guys who are temperamentally moderate,
right,
who have 96% conservative ratings and can win like states in Arizona, which are shifting. And they're going to be replaced by conspiracy theorists who are going to get blown away at the polls. And the same thing's happening. You've got Steve Bannon getting people that have been convicted of crimes, served time in jail as his alternative. This is an act of nihilism. And the question is, Mika, what happens to the Republicans who are remaining there? Did they really give Donald Trump a standing ovation yesterday after saying he was a threat to the Constitution every day behind the scenes? As Jeff Flake said yesterday, the poll line yesterday, which we're going to play a lot of it, this is not normal.
Well, and that's the point I wanted to make. Exactly that. You talk about the threat to conservatism, the threat to the Republican Party, and what damage Republicans are doing to themselves. What Jeff Flake is talking about, what he's pointing to, is a bigger problem. That these are truly dangerous times, and that we're living in an age right now where things are beginning to slip away if we don't stand up for what is right.
Are Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, are they the San Andreas fault line of the fracturing of a political party, a major political party, an historic moment? Are they the fault line? Are there going to be more senators to come? As Jeff Flake said yesterday on the floor of the Senate, you know, who else is there? Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you speak up?
Why? So here is some of Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona's speech on the Senate floor yesterday after he announced he will retire rather than seek re-election.
I rise today with no small measure of regret. Regret because of the state of our disunion. Regret because of the disrepair and destructiveness of our politics. Regret because of the indecency of our discourse. Regret because of the coarseness of our leadership. We must never adjust to the present coarseness of our national dialogue with the tone set at the top. The personal attacks, the threats against principles, freedoms and institution, the flagrant disregard for truth and decency, the reckless provocations, most often for the pettiest and most personal reasons, reasons having nothing whatsoever to do with the fortunes of the people that we have been elected to serve. None of these appalling features of our current politics should ever be regarded as normal. We must never allow ourselves to lapse into thinking that that is just the way things are now. It is also clear to me for the moment that we have given in or given up on the core principles in favor of a more viscerally satisfying anger and resentment. To be clear, the anger and resentment that the people feel at the royal mess that we've created are justified. But anger and resentment are not a governing philosophy. Without fear of the consequences and without consideration of the rules of what is politically safe or palatable, we must stop pretending that the degradation of our politics and the conduct of some in our executive branch are normal. They are not normal. Reckless, outrageous, and undignified behavior has become excused and countenanced as telling it like it is, when it is actually just reckless, outrageous, and undignified. And when such behavior emanates from the top of our government, it is something else. It is dangerous to a democracy. I am aware that there is a segment of my party that believes that anything short of complete and unquestioning loyalty to a president who belongs to my party is unacceptable and suspect. If I have been critical, it is not because I relish criticizing the behavior of the President of the United States. If I have been critical, it is because I believe it is my obligation to do so.
And Senator Flake will be joining us later on in the show.
You know, Jeff Flake talking about, again, this lifetime conservative who's dedicated his adult life to conservatism. Conservatism the way Ronald Reagan saw it. Conservatism the way Barry Goldwater saw it, the way William Buckley saw it, the way Russell Kirk saw it. A conservative's conservative by any stretch of the imagination. A guy, Willie, who actually was seen by some as being a troublemaker because he was too conservative. He was too unyielding when it came to cutting spending. I remember he sort of had a reputation in the House as being too far out there, too right-wing.
Wow.
And he's having to explain to his constituents that when he goes against Donald Trump, it's for, you know, reasons that have to do with protecting his beliefs, his conservative beliefs that he's held his entire lifetime, that Donald Trump hasn't held, even in the 5 years he's been a Republican. But this personality cult is, you can really see it in this story with Jeff Flake, because here you have a guy that people knew, and they knew him forever, and they knew he was conservative, and he's got a 96% lifetime conservative rating. But Donald Trump, as we have been saying around this table for 2 years, since he went down the escalators, he's not a conservative. And yet there's this personality cult that Trump is trying to inspire, and that he does in part by lying every day and convincing people that lies are the truth. And we just showed some of it yesterday. I could pick out 5 things he said yesterday.
He stopped the show yesterday and said, this is just a lie.
But this is...
when he tweeted.
There is a fever in the Republican Party. It has nothing to do with conservatism. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with good policy. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. And it is bringing this party to its knees and will cause its destruction soon.
And we ask over and over again, for what? For what exactly? Why? What's the cost of doing what Jeff Flake did yesterday? But we saw the cult of personality almost immediately after Jeff Flake's speech yesterday. You had conservatives, Republicans coming out and say, it's easy for this guy to do this. He had an 18% approval rating at home. He was going to lose his race. So he saw the writing on the wall and said, okay, I'm going to get out now before I have to lose a race, and now I'm going to find courage. That's not fair. He just wrote an entire book going after Trump. He's been going after Trump since the campaign. But there is a reflex right now among high-ranking Republicans. Even Mitch McConnell was sort of loath to praise what Jeff Flake did yesterday because they still believe they need to work with Donald Trump to get tax reform. If they want to get an agenda through, they believe they still need the president, so they're going to stick at his side.
Why can't you work with someone but also stick to what's right and sometimes tell them what they feel is wrong? When did a relationship become a one-way street? Why is working with President Trump having to declare some sort of loyalty oath and literally throw your entire self-respect down the toilet in order to work with him? I've never seen a relationship like that. That seems healthy.
I've never seen such cowardice, actually.
Complete cowardice.
Among the leaders of the Republican Party, and it is cowardice. They believe that if they cross Donald Trump, he may tweet something bad about them. Wait, hold on. Hold on.
Let's see.
You've got the most powerful... You've got the most powerful people in America afraid to stand up to the obscene behavior of Donald Trump. His threats, full frontal threats against the Constitution of the United States, because they are afraid of a tweet. And what they would find if they crossed Donald Trump and got in his face is that he would actually respect them more, and they could get a better negotiation. But they're cowards. You know, is it Allah Pundit? He's one of the good ones.
He's funny.
He's one of the... I don't know who he is, but Allah Pundit's...
No, don't. You'll pay for that.
No, I won't. Allah Pundit's one of the best there is.
He's a funny dude.
He tweeted yesterday that in a post-apocalyptic Washington, Speaker Paul Ryan could be seen wandering around amid the ashes saying, staying focused on tax reform. Staying focused on tax reform. Mitch McConnell, after one of the most extraordinary days in recent Senate history, Mike,
No.
said there's a lot of talk. Let's just stay focused on tax reform.
Okay.
They are
Toss to
joking.
Mitch McConnell.
They are joking, right?
Is Uncle Mitch.
Thank you, Mike.
They are joking. I know.
Bob Corker, George Bush, these are not backbenchers. At what point do you have an obligation as a leader of this party to weigh in on these very serious criticisms of the president?
What I have an obligation to do is to try to achieve the greatest cohesion I can among 52 Republicans, to try to achieve for the American people the agenda that we set out to achieve. And tax reform is what we are about. We're going to concentrate on what our agenda is and not any of these other distractions that you all may be interested in.
All this stuff you see on a daily basis on Twitter this and Twitter that, forget about it. Let's focus on helping people, improving people's lives, and doing the things that we said we would do that accomplishes that. That's what we're focused on. You going to ask about this, or? All right, good. Yeah, fine.
Mike, it's not Twitter.
What is wrong with them?
We're actually
They're
talking
wusses.
about a United States senator that they know, that Paul Ryan worked with, that was a fellow traveler, going on the Senate floor and saying that the President of the United States was a threat to not only societal norms, but constitutional norms. And Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell both said, oh, you guys just get distracted by Twitter. This has nothing to do with Twitter. This has to do with the United States Senator delivering one of the most significant speeches on the Senate floor in decades?
Yeah, maybe.
Perhaps.
Certainly.
In decades.
And not that it matters, but Paul Ryan was talking about Corker.
If I am wrong, if I'm being melodramatic here,
you're not.
Name me a more important Senate speech in the last decade, because this was the end of a movie. This was our Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where you had a senator saying on the floor that the President of the United States and his party was a threat to constitutional norms, societal norms, and our children.
Yeah.
Well, we're at a point, as we spoke earlier to this, where one major political party is fracturing right in front of us. We're at a moment when cowardice on the floor of the United States Senate trumps conscience, where truth seems to be less powerful than the fear of a tweet from the White House. And Casey, I would ask you, I've heard rumblings over the last 12, almost 24 hours now about resentment toward Jeff Flake's speech on the floor of the Senate from other members of the Senate because they fear it could interfere with tax cuts. What do you hear?
I think that, yes, there is potential resentment and issues around the agenda, this idea, but I honestly, I think what Joe was pointing to, and Mike, what you said about the splintering of this party before our very eyes, these leaders, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, they made a bet that they could outlast Donald Trump. And what is happening is that the people who would consider themselves to be a part of the governing, Jeff Flake, I think, would call it the human decency wing of the Republican Party, are not going to have a home at this rate anymore in this Republican Party. It's because of where their voters are. That's driving frustration among some of the rank and file Republicans in the Senate, because they're having to be led by Mitch McConnell, but they go home and their voters are saying, why aren't you standing up more for President Trump? Why are you being led? Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's approval ratings are sinking. They are becoming less popular. They are becoming a huge problem, and the president is really taking over the party, and that is going to leave so many people with no place to go. As you said, you know, Jeff Flake is not a Democrat, so where do people like that go in our politics? It's increasingly clear that they are homeless, and that we may be witnessing, you know, Jeff Flake said on the floor today, or yesterday, excuse me, I think this is a moment and we'll get over it. I'm not so sure that we aren't seeing a fundamental restructuring here.
And as you look at the splintering of the party, Joe, make no mistake, this is a win, Steve Bannon believes, for him and his movement. Breitbart had screaming headlines that it was a victory. They believe they have claimed a scalp. Jeff Flake was near the top of the Bannon hit list and people they were going to primary. They believe this clears the way for Kelly Ward, the person they want to become the senator from Arizona. They think this is the first sign that their vision of the Republican Party, their vision of conservatism, is winning.
It's insanity. I mean, what what it is. It's insanity. And Steve Bannon doesn't want to grow the Republican Party. He said as much. Steve Bannon wants to destroy the Republican Party. He declared himself a Leninist. He wants to tear things down. And I've got to say, he's not doing it. A segment of the Republican Party is doing it. A large segment of the Republican Party is doing it. And they have fallen in line. This is a personality cult. Our Constitution right now, constitutional norms are being threatened every day and challenged every day. People from the podium are lying every single day. Every single day they lie from the White House podium.
Every single day.
And Republicans know, with their children watching, that they are lying. My friends know. I talk to them.
How do they do that?
I talk to them. And you know what they say? They say, well, you know what? We're embarrassed by him, but he's better than Hillary Clinton. He's not running against Hillary Clinton. He's running the country. Let me say that one more time. Donald Trump is not running against Hillary Clinton anymore. He's running your country and my country, your children's country, right? So stop the linear thinking. This is not 2016. We're deep into 2017. We're in trouble. We've had less job growth over the past 6 months than we've had in years. North Korea and the United States could be on the verge of a nuclear showdown. The president is challenging constitutional norms every day. And Hillary Clinton, she's in Chappaqua, all right? Never to threaten you and your paranoid existence again. Worry about today. Worry about the Constitution. Worry about the things you told me when I ran 4 times that you cared about. Because all you ever told me you cared about was the Constitution of the United States. Doesn't seem that way, Mika.
No.
Doesn't seem that way now.
It doesn't.
Come on. Get some smelling salts, you know. Watch the Crimson Tide win again this weekend. Go to church on Sunday.
What are they holding on to?
Pray for this country and pray that we actually get some leaders that your children can look up to, because we don't have them right now. We'll be right back.
Legislative process on Capitol Hill. He wants to get taxes done. Bob Corker.
It's not true. No Gorsuch went through a legislative process. I would say that's a pretty big historical moment.
I don't know if that's a policy initiative.
Something that has a lasting legacy, probably far beyond most any other individual piece of legislation.
Thinking of health care or, for example, tax reform that have not been completed, at least not yet, on Capitol Hill. The lack of support from somebody like Bob Corker might make that a lot more difficult. Given that, does the president feel like he's winning?
I think he feels like America's winning. There's also a lot of other things beyond just the stock market. The fact that the unemployment levels have dropped, that's certainly a big thing. The fact that 1.7 million new jobs have been created since Donald Trump was elected, those are all positive things in the economy. We didn't say it was completely fixed, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. I think we've been more successful in these first 9 months than Obama was in 8 years.
It's hard. Watch. It's just hard to watch.
Crying?
I've got some
glasses fogged up.
Tears in the glass?
mud on my glasses.
How every day that is done, and one has to say hi to the kids at the end of the day?
I don't know. I'm kind of with the White House.
Lying for the president?
Just
President's
stop
lying?
having them. Just stop having them.
Just don't do it.
Just don't have, you know,
Send it. Walk out.
Kind of at the Kellyanne.
Like, where does this end?
We're kind of at the Kellyanne
like,
thing,
does this
Mika.
lead to some amazing position, job somewhere? What's Sean Spicer up to?
Let's talk about baseball, because I don't want to talk about what I just what I just heard. I don't.
No,
last night, the Dodgers, man.
Last night, Kershaw versus Keuchel, Dodgers versus Astros, 110 degrees on the field. The ball game played pristinely, quickly, crisply. 2 hours and 28 minutes. Dodgers win. That's baseball.
I like it.
Clayton Kershaw,
I have
almost
no idea what you're talking about.
11 strikeouts, gets a World Series win. But tonight, the Astros,
But I bet it's the truth.
have Verlander.
Verlander.
You know what that
Really?
means?
Is that true?
Yes.
My God,
That
that's
is
amazing.
actually
I
true.
love hearing a fact that is true.
That is true. Justin Verlander will be pitching
So
tonight.
Verlander's
Fantastic.
pitching tonight, Mike. Tell me, who has been as dominant as Verlander in playoffs? I mean, Pedro? I mean, who?
Pedro, actually not Pedro, Bob Gibson.
Gibson. Do you have to go back to 67 and 68?
I think
Bob Gibson?
For sheer dominance.
Any of those Braves guys? Smoltz, Maddox?
Oh, no, let me tell you something. God bless them. I loved them, and I followed them all year, but they did not perform in the playoffs the way they performed
Jack
in the
Morris
postseason,
in the early 90s.
the way they did in
Minnesota years.
in the regular season. But is Smoltz like one of the greatest announcers ever?
Oh, my God, he's good.
Is he one of the
He's
greatest?
stunningly great.
Yeah.
He is stunningly great. I mean, Mika, you're not a great baseball fan. If you listen to John Smoltz, he would bring you inside a baseball game. You would understand it and appreciate it.
Those guys, when those Braves pitchers knew so much, it was a great Sports Illustrated article, they knew baseball so much that they would be betting. Like, okay, Maddox is going to throw one here. And the end of the story was, I think Smoltz said, maybe it was to Glavine. He said, okay, he's going to throw him a low outside. It was like double or nothing, triple or nothing, quadruple or nothing. He said, okay, now he's going to throw him a low outside curve or slider or whatever. He's going to fell it off into the dugout. And Glavine's like, okay, triple or nothing. He puts it right there. The ball comes right at their feet. He's like, okay. Those guys knew where to put the ball. But Verlander, man, Verlander is in that zone right now.
Yes, he is.
All right.
And he's also a
get
the ball, throw the ball guy.
Get the ball, throw the ball guy.
You guys literally could go on for.
Oh, yeah, all we could.
I don't understand.
And by the way,
maybe we should.
No.
How great also that these games aren't being played on Adult Swim 14. That you actually can go to, and I love Adult Swim, but 14.
Adult Swim.
But they actually got it on
like last week.
You can go to Fox.
Yeah.
You go to Fox.
I finally found those games in the third inning every night.
The channel?
Trying to find where they are. But now, Channel 5, you're good.
It's unbelievable.
5, 7, that's it.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's like, I don't know where these channels are on my...
Not only that, but you're going to put on that aluminum hat, you know, to get the signal from...
Oh, I know.
You shouldn't have that channel.
Mike Lupica says Hershiser in 88. You think?
Yes.
Another Dodger,
Yeah.
Another Dodger.
And maybe
The facts that you all have in your brains about baseball that go back decades, that's just a waste of space.
So you think the greatest World Series in your lifetime you've seen was 67?
No, 75.
75.
I think 75 was the greatest World Series of my lifetime because I think baseball was sinking in terms of popularity throughout the country. It brought back baseball to a large extent.
What an incredible series. You know, Game 6 is... I've been following the Red Sox all year, but Game 6 did it for me. What about you? What's the greatest World Series you've seen?
It's a strange thing to say because the Yankees lost, but 2001 will always be my most special World Series given the circumstances a month after 9/11. Playing those games in New York, President Bush coming out and throwing that pitch with a flak jacket on.
Threw a perfect strike.
They broke our heart. Gonzalez broke our heart, but it was the...
Broke America's heart. You know, I actually...
I'm going to start talking
so my dad...
about clothing.
My dad... I told my dad...
I'm up for that.
You know, this is the first time I was...
Millie, go on.
First time I was ever for the Yankees because it was right after 9/11. My dad was rooting for Arizona. I said, Dad, you do realize outside the state of Arizona, the only people that are rooting for the Diamondbacks right now are Al-Qaeda. He goes, I don't care. I hate the Yankees. So I root for the Yankees the first time. And they lose.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
All right.
You and Osama.
You were wearing the Millie scarf yesterday, the green one, right?
I was.
Coming up, NBC News exclusive. Are the diplomats' efforts to avoid nuclear catastrophe between the United States and North Korea collapsing?
Some light news for you. We'll talk to Senator Chris Murphy of the Foreign Relations Committee about the new report, plus his take on the president battling with two of his committee members, Jeff Flake and Chairman Bob Corker. We're back in a moment. In an NBC News exclusive report this morning, multiple sources say diplomatic efforts between the United States and North Korea are on the verge of collapsing, in the words of one U.S. official, on their last legs. Pyongyang has reportedly shunned talks with the U.S. after President Trump increased his public attacks on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. According to officials, a top American diplomat, Joseph Yoon, has been warning Congress of the breakdown in meetings on Capitol Hill. A congressional aide who has spoken with Yoon directly tells NBC that the diplomat is searching for a Hail Mary attempt to restart any sort of dialogue. The breakdown in talks may explain recent comments from members of Congress on both sides, including Senator Bob Corker, who warned that Trump was undercutting diplomatic efforts. The growing tensions come as President Trump prepares for his first official trip to Asia next month. Trump's schedule is set to include visits to Japan, South Korea, and China, where North Korea is expected to be at the top of the agenda. Joining us from Washington, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Also with us at the table, Anya Manuel. She's the co-founder and partner in the strategic consulting firm Rice Hadley Gates, which, as the name suggests, features former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, former National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley, and former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates. Good to have you both on board. Senator Murphy, I'll start with you about exactly how you would characterize the nature of the situation with North Korea right now, and do you think President Trump's name-calling at the leader of North Korea has pushed things to a dangerous level?
It's not surprising that our negotiations are on life support right now. President Trump is deploying what is perhaps the worst negotiating strategy in the history of the American presidency. It's not just that he is out there calling this guy names. It's that he is publicly undercutting his Department of State by tweeting out that Rex Tillerson does not have his support and cannot talk and negotiate on his behalf.
So Senator, what should we do? Because obviously, going back to 1994, we've had one failed effort after another in North Korea. What is the right path forward? Obviously, we all agree it's not doing what Donald Trump's doing.
Yeah, you don't poke.
What would you be doing right now?
Well, again, you've got to empower your diplomats, and Trump is not wrong to make it very clear to the North Koreans that we have a military option, that we can take them out if they were ever to attack or threaten to attack us or our allies. But you've actually got to empower your diplomats to do the work, and you've got to communicate that the previous nuclear deals that other presidents have signed are still good. By threatening to back out of the Iran nuclear agreement, you're not incentivizing the North Koreans to enter into their own agreement. So it's a combination of military threats, real bilateral, multilateral economic sanctions, with which this president cannot put together because he is out there insulting all of the allies who would work with us on sanctions, and empowering your diplomats. He is doing none of the things necessary to achieve a real diplomatic breakthrough on North Korea.
It feels like, Anya, for many years, North Korean leaders have been viewed as crazy and almost laughed at by a lot of people, you know, with all their outrageous personal claims and everything else. Where are you right now in terms of how seriously to take rhetoric out of North Korea? The things they've said for many years that they're now saying have a little more weight behind them than they used to be. Are you concerned about a nuclear confrontation or any confrontation with North Korea right now?
Absolutely, and we really shouldn't be laughing at the rhetoric coming out. I think Kim Jong-un is more dangerous and more erratic than his father and grandfather. Also, you know, we're in the third U.S. presidential administration, fourth, that's trying to resolve this problem. The nuclear threat from North Korea is only getting worse and worse. I do agree with Senator Murphy that we need to support our diplomats. It's going to, however, all credit to Joseph Yoon for keeping those channels open, but it's going to take more than a mid-level diplomat to do this. You need South Korea, Japan, China, all on board, especially China. And I would say if there's one very narrow silver lining in all this, I was just in D.C. and heard that at least the conversations between the U.S. and the Chinese on North Korea are the most detailed and the most scenario planning we've ever done. Not to say that that will resolve it, but at least some form of diplomacy is still being given a chance, in spite of the president's
Why do you say Kim Jong-un is even more erratic and even more dangerous? Could you look at, for instance, what happened to Gaddafi when he gave up his WMDs and then ended up being killed by the United States government, and say, well, actually, if he wants to stay alive, this may be the most rational thing for Un to do?
Yeah, it's a good point. If regime survival is your goal, as clearly it is there, having nuclear weapons is a decent way to do that, as long as you don't employ them. I think you're right. Both what Senator Murphy said, backing out of the Iran deal doesn't give us a whole lot of credibility. Backing out you know, Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons. We then invaded Libya. That doesn't give us a lot of credibility here. I do think diplomacy is the only way forward, and I'm glad that there are still efforts being made.
No.
So, Senator Murphy, diplomacy is the only way forward. Empower the diplomats, as you just said. The Secretary of State was in Pakistan yesterday. An ally, not an ally, we're not really sure. North Korea on the precipice of we don't know what. If you were asked, if you were overseas in London or Bonn and some member of the cabinet in Great Britain or in Germany asked you to define American foreign policy in those areas, could you define it?
You know, American foreign policy is completely incoherent today, and I actually was overseas this weekend. I was in Ukraine, and I was in Estonia, which holds the EU